You know, I think a chapel has been something that was wanted for about 30 or 40 years, even before I got there. There were 2 sets of plans for a chapel in the president's office.
Really?
Which had never been used, yes. One of them was across where the new building's going to go.
Okay.
And it was going to be kind of an art building with a chapel attached to it. And I can't remember where the other one was, but there were 2 sets of plans actually for the chapel. It's hard if you haven't been on this campus without the chapel, but you would come on the campus and it would take a few minutes to realize it was a Catholic campus. And you know where the old chapel was, so
Yes.
you had to hunt to find the old chapel. So I think people through the decades wanted it. Bishop Foyce was very strong on it. In fact, Bishop Foyce said to me when I asked permission for the football field, that would be the last permission he gave me if I eat before chapel. So it was like...
Well, but an interesting blend if you can blend the chapel and the football field.
Yeah, I know. So it was like, don't ask to build anything until we get a chapel on that campus, you know. So it was a desire, and I think because it was so recognized by so many people as something needed, that really helped in terms of the fundraising for it.
I think you're right, though. When you first come on this campus, it's hard to imagine this campus without the chapel.
Without the chapel.
You know, it's one of the first buildings that you see, and importance from a signifying the Catholic traditions of our institution. It plays such a significant role.
It really does, yes. You know, and then we were so blessed with having Robert Hayes Architects. Actually, Bob Hayes, who's now deceased, had started to design this with his son Joe when Joe was in architectural school.
Oh, wow.
And so when they came then, the 2 brothers, Joe, came to say to us, we'd like to do this in honor of our dad.
Oh, that's great.
So
what a touching tribute.
It was, you know, and then they, you know, said this is what, and kept working. So things just started falling in place, and people were excited about it, you know, and people throughout the diocese were excited about it. There are, you probably noticed on the plaque, there are a number of parishes that supported this project. So, you know, it was good. And their vision, the Hayes' I'm talking about, vision for it, wasn't just a chapel, it was really a gathering space on the campus, which you see when you look at how it's designed.
And how it's used today. You know, as we were talking, one of the things that we see is how students are intentional about using the space. It gives them the opportunity, of course, to celebrate Mass, but at the same time, it gives them the quiet space to be reflective. And so we see students day in and day out coming in and using the chapel for that particular reason. And as we were kind of joking a little bit earlier, we've seen how the impact of COVID had affected the campus, and it gave us the space, and our students the space, to really have that spiritual development at a time that's really challenging, that we were all going through.
Yeah, yes, how to do it, and this gives you the
right.
Yeah, and then I think the outside spaces are just fabulous. Like you're using those a lot, I see now, for congregations and things. You know?
Yeah, and we've used this intentionally as a symbol, because I think it's critically important at Catholic institutions how we symbolize our traditions and our values. And there's no better way to signify at convocation the role that we play as a Catholic liberal arts institution. But I think the critical part, when you look at the role that the chapel plays in signifying our Catholic liberal arts tradition and values, we start with that almost on day one with convocation. And it's a great symbolism for our students to understand where they are, and certainly their place in our university, and how that plays through.
Right, yes. So, and then for fundraising, we really did have people step up. Like this beautiful window, you know, John Griffin's wife had just lost her brother, and so he wanted to do that in his honor, you know, so you just had those kind of things happen. So, and then I think as people started to see it come together, there was even more excitement.
The excitement built.
Yeah.
And we've seen the same thing, you speed the cycle up a little bit.
Yes, yes.
And certainly as we launched the strategic plan Lighting the Way and the Second Century campaign, we've seen that same type of excitement. When we first started laying out the vision, people were nice and smiled and said, okay, that sounds interesting. But then as we started rolling out some of the initiatives, the projects, we saw that excitement build. And certainly as we're going into the second year of the Second Century campaign, the excitement is just building. And I think it's contagious in some ways because it's brought new donors to the university. And it's built some excitement with our alumni and other foundations that we're working with.
I think it's always as simple for people that this university's alive.
Right.
That we are alive and we're looking at what's going on and we're trying to make sure that we're adapting so our students are prepared.
And I think that's a big part of it. When you look at the position that Thomas More University certainly occupies, being a diocesan institution is critically important to our identity, but also the role that we preserve in the education at a Catholic higher education level. And so how do we integrate those values and traditions for our students to make sure that they're going to be successful, not just in a career, but how do they become successful in life?
Yeah, successful people. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, good community members.
That's right.
Good husbands, good wives, yes.
Yes, they have to understand their role in our communities. And with so many of our students going back to the communities that they have been raised and born in, that's one of the great things about Thomas More is that we see the impact that we have within the communities here. And it's always fun now in our roles when you start talking with alumni and you start talking with ones who are second and third generation now. For over 100 years, the institution has had an impact here in Northern Kentucky and the greater Cincinnati area. And we're watching that impact now in different generations. And that's just the fun part.
Yes, yeah.
It really is.
I've even noticed that sometimes looking at some of the more recent more-overs. It's like it's a whole new group of alumni that you are featuring, and I'm like, oh my goodness, he graduated when I was here, or she was just starting out,
Yeah, it's been fun. I know, speaking with our alumni, especially as we've been engaged in the Second Century campaign, is having the stories. And you start talking with some of our younger alumni, they'll start talking about, well, my mom went to Bill and Madonna College and graduated there, and I'm here now. Or as we heard from one alum who was recent, arrived here when we opened the campus in 1968, and talked about how the campus looked vastly different. And I think that talks about the success the institution has had over that period of time, but also the intentionality of our role as a Catholic liberal arts institution, and what does that mean today in the 21st century.
Right. So, anyway, this was a good beginning here.
It was, and we're continuing on with the progress.
I know.
When you build on a good foundation, it makes life a little bit easier.
Yes. Well, and this university, no matter what name it was, whether it was Bill Madonna or Thomas More College or now Thomas More University, has had a good reputation in the community.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it has,
Yeah, the academic reputation has been stellar. But we've been very fortunate to have leaders like yourself and the roles that you have played to make sure that the beacon of light was always shining on the university, and you've done an extraordinary job, and we've been very fortunate to have you.